She ranked her male best friend above me because he was more important than any boyfriend. So I walked out. Weeks later, her smear campaign collapsed. His wife filed for divorce, and she ended up on my doorstep begging after her entire friend group turned on her. Hey Reddit, my girlfriend told me her best friend outranked me. So I said, cool, enjoy second place by yourself, and I left. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Before we get to her showing up at my door, let me start from the beginning. My name's Cole. 26. I work as a pipeline integrity inspector. I travel out to remote job sites, run scanning equipment along oil and gas lines, and write up detailed reports on what's cracking underneath the surface, before it becomes some kind of failure a federal agency has to hear about. The job keeps me outdoors in all weather, pays well enough that I've built a decent life at an age when most of my friends are still figuring out what they want to do. My setup's simple. 2-bedroom apartment I keep clean because clutter messes with my head. A Ram 2500 diesel with enough torque to make new truck owners feel bad about their payments. A gym schedule I protect like a dentist appointment. I keep it, I don't love it, and I'm always glad I went. My social life is small on purpose. A few guys I actually trust, one of them being Hector, who I've known since we were doing summer labor at 19. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. No drama in the mix. Nadia showed up about 11 months ago. She's 25, co-owns a hair salon downtown with her business partner, and we met at a mutual friend's garage party. The low-key summer kind where everyone shows up in jeans and stands around a fire pit pretending it's warmer than it is. She was funny right away. Not in a rehearsed way, just quick and dry, willing to let a joke land without explaining it after. That's actually pretty rare. I got her number before midnight. She texted first the next afternoon, which I appreciated because I don't enjoy the 3-day waiting game people pretend is some kind of strategy. First couple months were genuinely good, real, easy good. She came to my place, I went to hers. We drove up to a coastal rental for a long weekend and spent most of it walking the beach in the kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. She came to Hector's birthday and held her own in a room full of strangers without making it my job to walk her through it. And she was easy to talk to in the way that actually matters. When you've had a rough day on a job site and you call someone and they actually listen instead of waiting for their turn to speak. No real complaints for a while. Around month 3, I started noticing the shape of how she managed her world. She kept a lot of plates spinning and needed a lot of outside feedback to feel like she was doing it right. She'd check in with Jade or Britt before making decisions that were objectively hers to make. What to do about a difficult client, whether to renew her lease, how to respond to something her mom said. It told me something. Nadia basically couldn't function without outside input. She needed someone else to co-sign every decision she made, and whoever was closest to her ear had real leverage over her. Rhett was plugged in the deepest. Rhett is 29, works as a hospital lab tech, and has been Nadia's best friend since she was 19. He got married 2 years ago to a woman named Simone. The way Nadia described it, Rhett was the North Star of her life, the person who understood her best, who'd been there through the hard stuff, who knew her in ways nobody else in her current life could. She said this repeatedly, warmly, without seeming to notice that her boyfriend of several months was sitting right across from her while she said it. Every time I raised an eyebrow, not even with words, just a look, she had one response loaded and ready. He's married. That means he's safe. She said it the way you'd say something about geography. Flat, confident, like it was just a fact. I looked at her and said, married doesn't mean harmless. It means he's got a wife he's disrespecting. She blinked, didn't answer. Changed the subject like I'd gone off script, and she didn't have a response prepared for that version. I didn't push harder at first because I'm not the guy who blows up a relationship over a feeling I can't point to yet. But I started keeping mental notes, which is just a reflex from the job. When something might become significant, you track it early. You don't wait for the crack to become a rupture. Individually, each thing was explainable. Put them together, and it was a system. Rhett texted Nadia constantly during times she and I spent together. Not emergency stuff, just continuous contact. The kind that's basically just keeping tabs on someone. She picked up every single one immediately. Not after a minute, not after finishing her sentence. Immediately. I'd be mid-story at dinner, and her eyes would drop to the screen. She'd type back fast and put the phone face down like somehow that was respectful. One evening, I said it'd be nice to get through a meal without the interruptions. She looked at me like I'd suggested something unreasonable and said I didn't understand what real friendship looked like. I told her real friendship had off hours. She started to respond and I said, even and quiet, you don't have a best friend. You have a supervisor. She didn't answer that. She put the phone in her bag and we finished dinner without another word about it. But the look on her face told me that one landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to. After that, any concern I raised about Rhett came back labeled insecurity, controlling, avoidant. These weren't Nadia's words originally. I could tell by how precisely she delivered them, like she was reading from something someone else had written. Jade was the source. She had a half-finished counseling certificate she used like a medical license, diagnosing everyone in Nadia's life from a comfortable distance. Britt was a different kind of energy, but same result. She got a kick out of stirring things up in other people's relationships and watching what happened. She suggested tests Nadia should run on me, posts she should make to gauge my reaction, ultimatums she should throw out there. One that stuck with me. I told Nadia I needed a week to focus on a deadline-heavy job and asked her to give me some breathing room on the daily check-ins. Normal stuff. She ran it by her friends. What came back, in Nadia's wording but definitely not Nadia's voice, was that I was emotionally distancing and showing classic avoidant patterns. Britt's suggestion was to post something vague on Instagram and see how fast I reacted. The uninvited intrusion thing started around month 4. One Thursday, I'd planned a night at my apartment. Nothing elaborate, just food, a movie, time to decompress. Nadia showed up 40 minutes late and Rhett was with her. No text, no heads up. She walked in like this was totally normal, said Rhett had been having a rough week and needed to get out of his place, and figured the 3 of us could hang. He settled onto my couch and started running down his week. A work situation, a disagreement with Simone, a gym session that went sideways. I let it go for about an hour. Then I stood up, started clearing the coffee table, and said easy and without any edge, "All right, man, we're wrapping this. Early day tomorrow." I started stacking plates. He got the message. Nadia gave me a look on his way out. Later, when I told her a warning would have been nice, she said she didn't think I'd mind, and that the fact that I did mind said something about me she wasn't sure she liked. I asked what it said. Controlling. Second label. I was collecting them. The manufactured emergencies were the move I hated most, because they worked every time. On her, at least. One Friday, Nadia and I had a reservation we'd been waiting 6 weeks for. We were literally putting shoes on at her place when her phone rang. Rhett. She took it in the bedroom, came out 4 minutes later looking genuinely shaken, said there'd been a bad fight between Rhett and Simone, that she had to go over there. She canceled the reservation, hugged me, and left. I drove home, ordered delivery, and watched the game. A few days later, Nadia's cousin Maya mentioned casually, not knowing anything about the canceled dinner, that she'd heard Rhett and Simone had been at a birthday dinner that same Friday night, that they'd had a great time, that Simone had posted about it. I verified it myself in about 30 seconds of looking. Rhett had invented the whole crisis. Nadia had no idea, or chose not to investigate it, which at a certain point becomes the same thing. Maya is 27 and had been watching Rhett work Nadia's life for years. She pulled me aside at a family cookout, kept her voice low, and laid it out clean. No drama, like she'd been waiting a long time to say it. She said Rhett had done this version of it with every man Nadia had dated seriously. The manufactured crises, the constant contact, the strategic appearances at couple moments, the escalation whenever Nadia got close to someone. She told me about the guy before me who'd lasted almost 8 months before Rhett ran him out the same way. She said Nadia wasn't a bad person. She genuinely believed she just had a loyal friendship other people didn't understand. The problem was Rhett had spent years making sure she'd believe exactly that. What struck me about Maya was that she wasn't performing the conversation. She wasn't looking for a reaction. She laid it out the way you'd tell someone something you'd been sitting on for years. Here's what I saw. Here's how long it's been happening. She didn't tell me what to do with it. Just said she'd been watching this run long enough to know how it ended, and she was tired of watching it end the same way. She'd been carrying this for years and had decided I was worth the risk of saying it out loud. She figured I deserved to know while it could still matter. I thanked her, drove home, added everything she said to the notes I'd been keeping, not for any specific plan. Just because the day you need documentation is never the day you expected to need it. Nadia hosted a get-together at her apartment on a Saturday in late January. Wait, actually it might have been the last weekend of January, the 31st. Something like that. Whatever. Doesn't matter. 10 or 11 people. She cooked. I got there early to help set up, brought drinks, handled the back-end logistics the way I usually do. Rhett was already there when I arrived, which was notable because he lived across town and the party didn't start for 2 more hours. He was in her kitchen running things, telling her how to brine the chicken, reorganizing the counter space, moving stuff around like a man who decided access and ownership were the same thing. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in. Nadia said, "Oh, Rhett got here early to help," with a smile that was asking me not to make it a thing. I grabbed a bag of ice and started filling the cooler. Actually, back up. I forgot to mention what the evening started with before any of this even mattered. Hector had texted me around 4 that afternoon, asking if I wanted to bail and catch the game instead. I told him I'd be there. He sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. I kind of wish I'd taken him up on it. Within the first half hour of guests arriving, the dynamic was visible to anyone paying attention. Rhett positioned himself at Nadia's end of the room, touching her arm when he made a point, finishing her sentences in that casual way that signals intimacy to everyone watching. He leaned hard into the inside jokes and old references, the kind of stuff that makes everyone else at the table feel like they walked in halfway through something. He'd steer the conversation toward topics only they had context for, then look around the table while the punchline landed like he was collecting what he was owed. He was performing a relationship in public, not with his wife, with mine. A guy named Tate, who'd been to a couple of previous group events, caught me in the kitchen during a quiet moment. Low and even. That's weird, right? That's not just me? I told him I'd noticed it. He nodded and went back out to the patio without another word. I appreciated that he didn't dress it up. Dinner was fine on the surface. Good food, decent conversation. I was doing what I always do in a group, staying engaged, not dominating, letting things go where they go. Rhett was doing something different. He was managing the room, watching how people responded to him, checking Nadia's face every few minutes to make sure the reading was where he wanted it. Then the conversation landed on a local policy topic, and Rhett and I had different reads on it. When Nadia didn't come to his side, because she actually agreed with some of what I was saying, his tone started slipping. Rhett smiled like he'd already decided I was wrong. Okay, he said, slow. But that's not how it works in the real world. A couple people laughed politely, not because it was funny, because they weren't sure what else to do. It's exactly how it works, I said. The ordinance is public. The incentives are public. You can read them. He tilted his head. You're very confident for someone who doesn't live here. I live here. I just don't argue like I'm auditioning. His eyes flicked to Nadia again, like he wanted her to tap the brakes for him. She stared at her plate. That's when he started repeating my point back with a grin, like he was translating it for the table. So what Cole is saying is that the city is like secretly playing chess, and everyone else is too dumb to see it. I set my fork down. Stop looking at her for permission. Talk to me. The table went quiet. He stared. I said, we can disagree. You don't get to be disrespectful about it. He pushed his chair back and leaned forward, the kind of lean that's supposed to look intimidating. I looked at him like he was an interesting weather formation and said flatly, if you need an audience to feel tough, congratulations. You've got one. He stood up, turned to Nadia like I'd stopped existing. Are you going to let him talk to me like that? She's not in this conversation, I said. It's between you and me, man to man. If you've got something to say it with your chest, or say it to a judge. Pick one. That dropped on the table like a plate. Nobody said anything. He picked up his napkin with exaggerated care and set it down. Said Nadia's name. Said he was leaving. She was up before he'd finished the sentence, following him to the door. I heard them in the entry for a few minutes, voices low. She came back and sat down and put on a smile that had nothing behind it. The party died in about 40 minutes. A few people checked their phones. By 9:30, everyone had found a reason to leave. I shook hands with the ones I knew, said the right things, stayed behind to help clean up. That was the mistake. I should have read what was coming and left with the guests. She came into the kitchen, arms crossed. Rhett said you embarrassed him, and you need to apologize by tomorrow morning. I stared at her. You're kidding. I'm not. You made him look stupid. He did that himself. Her jaw tightened. You don't get it. You don't understand what real friendship looks like. Real friendship doesn't come with loyalty tests, I said. Or a demand letter schedule. She flinched at that, just slightly. Then she said the rehearsed part. Jade says you're escalating because you feel threatened. That's what insecure men do. Oh, so Jade wrote this. Her eyes snapped up. Don't talk about my friends like that. Then don't bring them into my relationship. I'm standing right here. Talk to me. She exhaled hard through her nose. A confident man wouldn't even care. I leaned in just enough for her to hear me clearly. A confident man doesn't apologize for defending himself from disrespect. Tell your committee I said good luck, I told her. She said her friends agreed I was the problem. I said apologizing for something I didn't do to someone who'd been disrespectful all night wasn't maturity. It was surrender. She said I didn't understand their friendship. I asked her if Rhett had apologized for any of his behavior. She said he didn't owe anyone an apology. Then she dropped the ranking. Clean, unhesitating, like it was something she'd been waiting to say out loud for months. Rhett and I are basically family. Partners come and go. The moment those words left her mouth, her face shifted. The kind of shift that happens when someone realizes they've said the quiet part out loud. Did you hear yourself? She didn't even hesitate. That's what made it worse. He was here before you, she said. He'll be here after you. So that's the deal. You want a boyfriend who accepts permanent second place? It's not like that, she snapped. Too fast. It is exactly like that. You just said it out loud. Her voice lowered. You're making me choose. No, You already chose. I'm just listening. And then she lifted her chin and said, flat, he is more important to me than you are. That's the truth. I looked at her for one full second. Then date him. Problem solved. She opened her mouth. I said, I don't audition for second place. I picked up my keys, walked to her front door, and left. She said my name twice. I didn't turn around. Got in the truck, drove home, and that night I documented everything. Date, time, sequence, exact words in the Notes app on my phone. Then I went to bed. Morning came. I made coffee. She'd told me where I ranked. She'd meant it. Nothing left to negotiate. I sent one text. We're done. Don't contact me again. Blocked her number. Blocked her on every platform I could find. Had the front desk call her. They had her number on file from a package she'd once sent to my unit, to let her know she had a charger and a book waiting in a bag at the lobby with her name on it. No note. No invitation. Then I went to the gym, hit everything I was supposed to hit, went home, made food, and called Hector to shoot pool that evening. Over the first rack, he asked what happened. I gave him the condensed version. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't offer a hot take, or try to make me feel better by reframing it wrong. When I finished, he racked again and said, you did the right thing. Then we played. That was exactly the right amount of conversation about it. 3 days after the breakup, around 10 at night, I heard a knock at my actual apartment door. Not the intercom. My door. She'd either followed a neighbor through the building entrance or remembered the entry code from a prior visit. She'd been to my place enough times that both were possible. I checked the peephole. Nadia. She was holding herself together, but barely. She leaned close to the door like she could press herself through it. Cole, she said, small. Open the door, just 5 minutes. I didn't move. You don't get 5 minutes. You got 11 months. I said something stupid, she said. I heard her swallow. I was angry. I didn't mean it like that. You meant it. You didn't like how it sounded after. There was a quiet beat. I can fix this, she said. No. You don't fix it by showing up at my door after I told you not to contact me. Her voice cracked, just slightly. So that's it? That's it. She stood there another second, like she was waiting for the door to change its mind. Then she knocked twice more and left. That was 3 days in. By the following Sunday, Nadia had posted on Instagram, vague caption under a soft-lit photo, something about releasing people who made her feel small, and learning to recognize unsafe patterns. Jade commented, you are so brave, within 3 minutes of the post going live, which tells you everything about how rehearsed the whole thing was. Britt shared it to her stories with a broken heart emoji. A mutual I trusted forwarded me screenshots that same night. I saved everything. Said nothing publicly. Monday morning, I got a call from my direct supervisor. She said a client, one of the pipeline companies I inspected twice a year, a relationship I'd spent 3 years building, had received an anonymous email over the weekend, claiming I had a history of threatening behavior toward women, and suggesting they verify my conduct before my next scheduled site visit. My stomach didn't drop. It just went cold. Cole? She said. I want to flag something weird before it turns into anything. What's up? We got an email forwarded from one of your clients, anonymous. Claims you have a history of threatening behavior toward women. She kept talking. I'm treating it as spam. There's no detail, no incident, nothing. But I wanted you to hear it from me, not secondhand. Thank you. Can you send me the email and the headers? I want it documented. A pause. Do you know who would do this? I have a strong guess. I'm handling it. Okay, keep me looped. I will. And I appreciate the heads up. I hung up, called Hector, told him what had just landed on my client account. He went quiet for a second. So what are you doing? I said, calling a lawyer in about 45 minutes. Now it's paperwork. He didn't say anything else. He knew I had it handled. Her social media moves were her business. The moment it crossed into a client relationship I'd spent 3 years earning, it became mine. I called my lawyer, a woman I'd used once for a lease dispute, and explained everything from start to finish. She told me the Instagram post and the workplace email together were enough for cease and desist letters to Nadia, Jade, and Britt. She was direct and matter-of-fact about it, which I appreciated. We weren't building a case for drama. We were building one for documentation, and she understood the difference. We drafted the letters over the next 3 days. They went out the following Thursday, hand-delivered by a process server and sent by certified mail, with a clear statement. Remove all posts implying threatening or unsafe behavior. Stop all contact with my employer and clients, and discontinue any further defamatory communication or face civil action. My lawyer requested the original email headers from the client's IT department. The subscriber records tied the sending IP address to Britt's home internet account. Not a guess. It went into the letter. The documentation package also included a full export of the group chat, which came from a woman named Petra. She'd been loosely in Nadia's circle for a few years and had been in that group chat long enough to watch the entire campaign get workshopped in real time. She messaged me through a mutual, said she was done being adjacent to it, and thought I deserved the receipts. The chat showed Jade literally typing out ways to spin my normal behavior into red flags, Britt proposing the workplace email campaign in writing, and Nadia greenlighting the whole thing with a time-stamped thumbs-up emoji. All 3 names. All of it dated. Jade deleted her comments within 90 minutes of receiving her letter. Britt deactivated her Instagram and went dark for 4 days, then reactivated to post her retraction when her attorney required it documented publicly. Nadia left the post up for 38 hours. I think she was waiting to see if I'd back down, then quietly removed it with no statement, and posted her own retraction a few weeks later for the same reason Britt had. I never went looking for Rhett's wife. Simone found me. That matters. She messaged me through a mutual about 10 days after the breakup. Polite, brief, and direct, in a way I respected immediately. She said she'd been going through synced cloud backups, the kind that populate automatically on most phones, the kind most people forget are running, and had found Rhett's message history with Nadia. She didn't share the specifics. The volume and character of it were apparently enough on their own to tell her everything the last 2 years of marriage had been hiding. She'd had suspicions for a while, she said, but suspicions without evidence are just something you carry. The backups had given her evidence. She wanted to know if I had documentation of what had actually happened at the dinner party. I put together a clean package, the time-stamped notes from that night, the exact words from the kitchen ranking, quoted verbatim with date and time, screenshots of the posts, the comments, and the cease and desist letters, the group chat export. One line at the top, here's the actual sequence. Do with it what you need to. Every item was either a screenshot, a timestamp, or a signed statement. Nothing that required her to take my word for it. She responded within an hour. 2 words. Thank you. What she did with the package was fast. She confronted Rhett. Whatever that conversation looked like, it ran over multiple days and ended with a decision. Within that same week, Rhett had moved out of their shared home and into a short-term rental on the other side of town. Simone had a family law attorney returning her calls by Friday. She'd also taken my timeline to a longtime mutual friend of theirs, someone who'd been watching the Rhett-Nadia dynamic from the outside for years. And that person confirmed the pattern went back further than anything I'd personally witnessed, further than Simone had ever been told. There had been a version of this with a different man before the marriage. Basically, their whole marriage had been built on Rhett keeping that buried. With the marriage exposed and the I'm safe, I'm taken shield gone, Rhett had nothing left to hide behind. And he made the exact mistake people in that position always make. He escalated, openly, and started leaving witnesses everywhere. On a Tuesday afternoon, he showed up at the salon during peak hours. Maya happened to be there getting her hair done, and gave me the full sequence afterward. He walked in unannounced and asked to speak to Nadia privately. She brought him to the back. Within about 3 minutes, the conversation was loud enough that the entire front of the salon could hear it clearly. You told her. His voice cut through the salon. You went to Simone. Nadia's voice came back sharp, controlled. Lower your voice. No, because you're not doing this. You're not blowing up my life and then hiding behind your little calm voice. Several clients turned in their chairs. A dryer clicked off somewhere. You need to leave, Nadia said. He laughed. One short, ugly sound. Leave? After you chose him? After you chose some guy you knew for 11 months over 6 years of real friendship? 2 stylists froze mid-cut. Nadia said louder now. Rhett, get out. He stepped closer. Say it. Say you didn't use me. 2 employees moved in without being asked. Not aggressive, just bodies in the space. One of them said, Hey, you gotta go. Rhett stared at Nadia like she'd betrayed him in slow motion. Then he backed up, pointed once, and said, You're going to regret this. And he walked out like he wanted everyone to remember his exit. The salon manager documented the incident in writing within the hour. 2 employees signed brief witness statements. A few days after the salon scene, Rhett showed up at Nadia's apartment building late at night. He buzzed from the lobby. She didn't let him up. He got in through a side door and stood in the hallway outside her apartment, knocking and asking her to open the door. She called the non-emergency police line from inside while he was still in the hallway. 2 officers arrived, removed him from the building, and filed a report. That hallway exchange was audible to 2 neighbors on the same floor. One of them had cracked her door open to see what the noise was. She saw his face. She heard his voice. She remembered both. The next morning, Nadia went to the building management office with the police report number and filed a formal building complaint. She also went back to the precinct and added the salon incident as supplemental documentation. The manager's written account and the 2 employee statements attached. The neighbor wrote a voluntary statement and left it with building management that same week. Rhett had now created witnesses in two completely separate environments in under 72 hours. The same man who'd spent years running on plausible deniability, manufactured crises, constant low-level contact, behavior that was always just explainable enough, had finally made himself impossible to misread. The woman who'd spent 11 months telling me that Rhett was safe because he was married had now filed 2 documented incident reports with 2 separate agencies in under 5 days about the man she'd ranked above me. Say it with your chest or say it to a judge, I'd told him at that dinner table. He took the first option, and it cost him considerably more than a seat at dinner. The salon scene had a consequence Nadia hadn't planned for. Camille, her business partner, who'd co-signed on the lease, the equipment loans, and the salon's public reputation, had been standing 12 feet away when Rhett came apart. She scheduled a sit-down with Nadia the following Monday. From what Maya relayed, it wasn't a long meeting and Camille didn't yell. She was calm in the way that's worse than yelling. The way someone sounds when the decision's already done. And they're just reading you the summary. She told Nadia that the online smear campaign, the police reports, and a full public meltdown inside the salon itself had created real liability exposure for the business. Clients had mentioned it. 2 employees had asked questions. Rhett was permanently banned from the premises in writing, effective immediately. And if the legal situation escalated further, they'd be discussing a formal restructuring of Nadia's client-facing responsibilities until everything was resolved, meaning Nadia might be working the back for a while. Nadia had spent 11 months telling me Rhett was safe. In 1 week, he had cost her a police report, a documented building incident, and a restructuring warning from the woman who co-owned her livelihood. Simone's attorney filed formal separation paperwork using the police report, the salon incident documentation, my time-stamped timeline, and Rhett's phone bill logs, which showed the volume and timing of his contact with Nadia in detail. Call logs showing more than 50 contacts per week to the same number, including during hours Nadia and I were on documented dates, told their own story without a word of context. Every one of them was on the record now, time-stamped, attached permanently to a filing that wasn't going anywhere. Jade and Britt's retractions went up within a day of each other, nearly identical lawyer-drafted language, acknowledging they'd shared opinions about a situation they had no first-hand knowledge of. Both posts went up without drama, which told me both of them understood exactly how close they'd gotten to a civil action they couldn't win. Nadia's retraction went up about 3 weeks after the original Instagram post. It removed the implication of threatening behavior. It confirmed I'd ended the relationship without threats, coercion, or unsafe conduct. It acknowledged that contacting my employer had been inappropriate and unwarranted. It wasn't an apology. It was a legal document with a caption and a filter. But it was public. It was permanent. And it went up under her own name. Then the social structure fell apart the way it always does once there's legal paper involved. Jade and Britt stopped being Nadia's advocates in the mutual friend circle and quietly became her alibi problems. Maya told me within 2 weeks of the retractions that both of them were privately telling people, she wrote it, we warned her. Nadia got uninvited from a group trip that had been planned for months. No announcement, just a payment split that went out to everyone except her. Maya said, they dropped her the second lawyers showed up. They'd been happy to draft the strategy from the sideline, but the moment real consequences had their names on them, they made themselves scarce. Nadia had treated these 2 as her most trusted advisors for 11 months. They lasted less than a week after the letters hit before acting like they'd barely been involved at all. Rhett's social circle did their own quiet recalibrating once Simone's filing became known. It's hard to stay visibly supportive of a man whose wife is pursuing separation paperwork and who was physically escorted from a residential building by uniformed officers. One by one, people found reasons to be less available. The social credit he'd spent years building started draining fast, and there was no one left to loan him anymore. Maya texted me the week the police report became broadly known. I told you, every single time, with every guy. I'm sorry it took this long for everyone else to see it. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She'd given me the truth at a cookout with no obligation and nothing to gain from it, at a point when it still could have saved me months of wasted time. That's more than most people do. I won't forget it. My contract extension with the pipeline company came through for another 2 years. The client relationship I'd spent 3 years building stayed intact. The anonymous email, the group chat, the cease and desist letters, the IP trace, all of it is still sitting in a folder on my laptop organized by date. I haven't opened it since. I don't need to, but it's there. 5 weeks and 2 days after I walked out of Nadia's kitchen. I'd just gotten back from 10 days in New Mexico, a big inspection run on a distribution line, long hours, remote terrain, the kind of work that clears your head like nothing else does. I'd been home about 4 hours, done laundry, made a real meal, Actually sat at the table and ate it, which I don't always do after a long stretch on the road. I was on the couch watching a game with the volume low. Just past 9 at night, my building's intercom buzzer went off. I checked the lobby camera feed on my phone. Nadia. She buzzed again. The intercom crackled faintly, and her voice came through, controlled, like she'd practiced it. "Cole," she said. "I just need you to hear me. Please." I stared at the camera feed and didn't move. Then I called the front desk and told the attendant that a former girlfriend I'm no contact with was in the lobby, and I needed her escorted out. The attendant handled it. About 5 minutes later, the lobby camera showed Nadia walking back out through the front entrance and getting into a car. No scene, no confrontation, no chance for her to run whatever speech she'd practiced in her head on the drive over. Honestly, I don't know what she was going to say. I don't care. The idea that showing up at my building after weeks of legal correspondence was going to change my position told me everything I needed to know about how clearly she'd ever understood me. She'd spent 11 months outsourcing every decision she made. Somewhere in those 5 weeks, someone in that circle had apparently told her a good enough speech could reverse a man who'd already filed a cease and desist. That's the kind of advice you get when you keep asking the wrong people. I muted the buzzer app and went back to the game. Anyway, here's where everything landed, for the record. Simone filed formal separation paperwork. Rhett was served, moved into that studio rental across town, and stopped showing up anywhere he wasn't supposed to be once the paperwork actually had consequences attached to it. Jade and Britt's retraction stayed up. Nadia's retraction stayed up. Camille's restructuring arrangement at the salon stayed in place. Hector and I still play pool on Thursday nights when I'm not on a job site. The gym program is running well. The Ram needed new rear shocks last month. Handled that on a Sunday afternoon in the parking garage, with Hector handing me tools and his dog sitting in the truck bed doing absolutely nothing useful, because that's how you spend a Sunday when your life doesn't have other people's chaos in it. The job is good. The pipeline doesn't lie to you, and the crack is always exactly where the scan said it would be. I appreciate that more than I used to. She's still blocked on everything. No further contact after that. But Maya mentioned last week that Nadia had reached out to her once since all of it. Didn't say what was said. I didn't ask. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.